It's time for This Week in WordPress, episode number 195, entitled Steve Jobs Wore Dark Pattern T-shirts. It was recorded on Monday, the 7th of February, 2022. My name's Nathan Wrigley, and as always, I'll be joined by some WordPress notable guests. This week, it's Pieter Neri, Maciek Palmowski, and Remkus de Vries, and because it's all about WordPress, guess what we're going to talk about? First up, 5.9 core contribution statistics. Who is helping build WordPress Core? Which companies do they work for? And so on. We also talk about the enormous value, the monetary value of the WordPress ecosystem. It might be significantly bigger than you think. There's a new idea floating around of having a block protocol so that blocks, not just WordPress blocks, but blocks anywhere on the internet could be interoperable. Do you like the idea of that? A German court has fined a website owner for using the Google fonts, and because of that, they've given the IP address of visitors over to Google, and that is against the GDPR. There's a long discussion to be had there. We get into the topic of accessibility because I did a podcast episode this week with Amber Hinds, and we also introduce you to a new tool called PenPot. It's all coming up next on This Week in WordPress. Good afternoon, hello, wherever you are in the universe. Hopefully you're doing well and you are happy. You have joined us for episode number 195 of the This Week in WordPress show. Very glad to have you along. Feel free to drop us a cheeky little comment in, depending on where you are watching from. We have a few little bits of housekeeping that we need to do each and every week before I introduce the guests. And that is to say that if you are watching this over on Facebook, which some of you do, then you have to go through this extra little step. You have to go to, no, that's not it. It's this one. There we go. You have to go to chat.restream.io/FB. Otherwise, we don't know who you are. Now, you may very well wish to post incendiary comments and be anonymous. And if that's the case, that's fine. You don't need to go through that step. But if you don't want to go through that step because you don't like giving Facebook information, then you could just write your name at the beginning of the comment. Also, feel free, if you've got this on a screen over to your left or to your right and you're not really paying attention to it, feel free to do that. But why not? Why not take a moment? Go to wpbuilds.com/live. That's where we're broadcasting this. That's probably the easiest way because it's open to everybody. Copy and paste the URL, stick it in Twitter, and say, stop what you're doing. Come and watch this show because, that would be nice. We've got a few of you coming in and posting your comments. I appreciate it. 3 lovely guests on the show today. Where shall we begin? Let's begin with Pieter. How are you doing, Pieter?
Hello. I'm really well. Very happy to be here. It's been a while.
Well, it's been a while since you've been on this show, but it hasn't been so long since we had you on the WP Builds because we had you on.
We had you on our little
true. Yeah, we had you on our little UI show a couple of weeks ago. But Pieter is a UX expert and global speaker. She helps businesses and agencies win on the web by putting users at the center. She loves educating designers and developers in the best UX and UI practices via workshops, courses and talks. Pieter is also a UX project lead on international projects and a maverick at Cloudways, a cloud hosting platform. And in a former life, she was a full-on creative, spending her days creating images. Do you miss those days?
Sometimes, yeah. But it was still, it had its, bad moments as well as good ones. But yeah.
Yeah. On the whole, happy where you are now. Okay.
Exactly. I'm very happy now as well.
Good. Well, thanks for joining us today. We also have Maciek. Maciek, please forgive me if I butcher your surname. I did practice it, and then I've forgotten what I practiced. Palmowski.
That's perfect, really.
Is it?
Oh. Yes, and when I heard how you pronounce Maciek, I was really impressed. Really, I thought that you were practicing like the whole week.
That's the end of the show this week. It's not going to get any better. Thanks for joining us. We'll see. Honestly, it's downhill from here. Brilliant. I feel very chuffed. Let's introduce Maciek, though. Maciek is a WordPress developer working at Buddy. You can find that at body.works, by the way, as a WordPress ambassador. After hours, he spent most of his time trying to find interesting news for the WP Owls newsletter or cycling. It's one or the other. By the way, if you don't subscribe to WP Owls, you must. You must stop what you're doing and go and subscribe there. You put a lot of effort into that, don't you guys? It's brilliant. Well done.
Thanks. That's really nice to hear.
Where do
And
we find it? Give us the URLs.
it's wpowls.co. Sadly, the .com was already taken. So
Really?
yeah,
That's
it was.
Yeah, it's a blow. Anyway, go and check it out. It's a fabulous, and the Twitter stream is always full of stuff. There's loads of content coming out, and you should go and check out Bodyworks as well, because we actually did a podcast, which I'll maybe show in a little while. And I don't know how this is going to go. We have Remkus de Vries, who's going to be introduced by Maciek.
So Remkus, before we started, said that he has a new role at Surfball. He's working there as a Steve Jobs with sex appeal.
Yes. Yeah, nice.
This is the official title, right?
Not the official title, no doubt. Tell us, Remkus, in your own words, who you are and what you do. What is your new role?
So this actually changed in late October last year. I switched from a position at Surfball from focusing on partners and marketing mostly to focusing on people and also still marketing and partners. But head of people is the official role now, and the main reason for this is we're hiring essentially. We're growing fast, and we need people. So that deserves a concerted effort.
Yeah, nice. You can check that out at servbolt.com, and over there you'll find lots and lots of information about what they provide and why they are different. But thank you for joining us today, Remkus. Let's just have a quick look, see if there's anybody joining us. Peacher Neri, she's yeah. She's there. We've also got Elliot. Elliot, thank you. Thanks for joining us. Hello. That's right. We've got Courtney, who says hello to you, and that's me. We've got Maya from GoDaddy. Peter, who joins us regularly. He's in the US, and Peter says she's already signed up to WPL. So there you go.
Thank you.
Right now.
Yeah. Oh, and Remkus. Yeah, very good. See, we're all aficionados. Okay, let's get stuck into what we're doing today. This is our website, wpbuilds.com, blah, blah, blah. There's links, buttons, things you can press, forms you can fill out and put your name into, and we'll send you stuff about WordPress. But don't want to dwell on that. What we want to do is talk about WordPress and the people of WordPress. This is the first bit we got this week. This is over Jean-Baptiste Ordress. I apologize if I have butchered that name as well, but I will put some show notes together, which will come out tomorrow. And this is a little survey. I think he's been doing it she, I don't know, has been doing it for several years. And it's kind of a nice little breakdown with graphics about who is contributing to make the WordPress project. If memory serves, because I read this last week, this is simply about core contributions, nothing else. So it's not talking about, marketing or any of the other teams. It's simply what is committed to core. Translations and so on. Yeah, it's just the core stuff. Thanks, Remkus. Yeah. And I think it's quite interesting. And focusing on 5.9, which has obviously just hit us, I'll just go through a few top line statistics, which I thought was interesting. And then you can fill us in, you guys, about whether you thought this was a representation that was laudable, something to be changed, something to be, modified in some way. 624 people coming from 54 different countries, from 159 different companies. That's the kind of bottom line. If you can go and find this, you'll see these nice little graphics where they put everything in easy to consume circles. So the graph that we're looking at the moment, for example, is country ranking by number of contributions. And I bet you can't figure out what the number one country was in terms of contributions. Well, it was the US, 1,169. And then it kind of drops off pretty quick after that, to be honest. In second place, it looks like it was Russia, with 330. In third place was Australia, which is, considering the population of Australia, is a pretty mean feat, I think. I think the last time I checked, it was about 20 million, roughly something like that. And the United Kingdom was 243, and we can dwell on that more. And then they moved on. There was more information about that, but then we move on to the different companies or people. Company rankings, and the graph is pretty dominated by one company called Automatic, who had a total of 1787 contributions, followed closely by Remkes's former workplace, Yoast. Remkes, is that a culture that must have been incredibly deliberate, right? It can't have happened by accident.
No. It is by design and by intent. Yoast as a company has contributing back as one of the highest virtues within the company, besides the actual things that they do. And they do a tremendous job at it. They organize, so they had the Yoast Contribution Day the other week. So they organize all of these different events and internally as well. So yeah, there's a lot of things happening at Yoast to help build a WordPress project.
Yeah, so Automatic comes in first, 1787. Then it's Yoast, and they really do dominate that chart. And then the next one, I think, is Whodunit at 170, Bluehost at 165, and curiously, an individual came in fifth position. And Remkes, you know more about this than I did. Can you say the name for me?
Juliette.
Thank you. Who
Juliette
works
Reinders Volmer. So as far as I know, because that was the case, and I haven't checked with her recently, but I believe she was mostly hired by Yoast to give back to the project in various stuff. But one of the things that she is highly active on is the unit testing.
Yes, because she's one of the creators of the polyfill library that is introduced now into the unit testing. Yeah.
So cool. So
she maintains it and bridges it, and
in a sense, the contribution of Yoast, because she's sort of seconded. That's probably the wrong word, but you know what I'm trying to say. The contribution from Yoast, financially at least, anyway, is significantly bigger than it looks like here. If that status quo that you described when you were there still exists. Anyway, curious that there's really two big players there, and then it falls off into the sort of mid hundreds and then low hundreds, and then it drops off significantly. And the graph is surrounded by hundreds of smaller companies. Yeah.
But to be honest, the third place is kind of interesting because if I remember, this is a very small agency, this Whodunit, or how do you pronounce it?
Yeah, Whodunit. Yeah.
Yes, if I remember, they are a very small agency, and they are, when it comes to, let's say, contributions per people who are working at the company, are in the first place, because even Automatic doesn't have such a ratio of contributions per employed person.
Yeah, I see what you mean. So Automatic at the minute is, I think it's about 1,400 people, something like that. And whoever Whodunit is, forgive me, I should probably have done that research before we started, but never mind. They have roughly a tenth of the contribution base there, but obviously you're saying they probably don't have 140 employees. It's just a handful. So, they're really punching above their weight. And then it goes on, then they break it out in a different way. And then they talk about individual people who are worthy of mention. So, for example, Tonya, Sergey, and what have you. Lots and lots of interesting stuff here. And I want to just pull it back to that one there, the big one that we were looking at a minute ago. There's this conversation which keeps coming around about the people that get to design WordPress are the people who can kind of afford to show up. And I'm going to drop that bomb, and then I'm going to back away and see if anybody wants to take the hand grenade into their hands and talk more about that. In other words,
do we keep the pin in, or do we pull it out?
I think you can decide whether you want to pull the pin out or not. But go on, you lead. Go for it.
I first wanted to comment on the number of automaticians, because the number of contributions from Automatic is 1787, if I remember.
Yep.
And that's roughly how many automaticians there are. So there are 1,700 plus.
Okay, that's significantly bigger than my memory told me. Okay, so you're saying there's a ratio of about 1 to 1. Okay.
So that's what this looks like. Yeah.
Yeah.
However, is that right? Because, for instance, I know, I mean, don't we all? But I know quite a few, for instance, happiness engineers who I know do not contribute to their core.
No. So in actual people contributing, it's going to be less, but there are 1,700 plus automaticians, and that's roughly what the number says here as well. So you could translate it to one-on-one. The reality, of course, is that it's a subset of it.
Come on.
No, I was going to say to answer your question in terms of who decides where WordPress's future goes, and in terms of who shows up. I don't think that we can derive that from this particular graph, even though it looks like it is. But I think it's more of a I don't think it's causality per se. I do think it's the case, but that's, I think, probably because our fearless leader is in that group.
I guess the argument is often made that if you, like, let's say, for example, that you are working at, I don't know, just there's several hosting companies there, and you've got very big budgets. Some people would say, would it be nice to see their circle growing over the next few years? And also, I guess people have concerns that if you are in one of the bigger circles, do you get more of a voice? Are there kind of like back channels that exist? And I genuinely have no idea whether there's any truth in that or not. But the whole process of, if you can afford to put people, can you push the agenda of what's going to be coming in WordPress? I don't know. Sadly, my circle doesn't exist.
I don't know if you can push the agenda. I don't know if you can push the agenda. I think you can contribute to the agenda. I think there's a difference.
Yeah. Courtney says, the next graphic down on the post, there's more thorough quality of people per... Did you mean this one, I wonder, Courtney? I don't know if you did. Did she, do you think, that one?
Do you know what I would like to see? I think it would be amazing if these companies actually sponsored independent contributors who are freelance people who don't work for any company, and they give up their time and they suffer from it. Because I know I've gone from being a contributor that wasn't sponsored by anyone to being sponsored. And it made a huge difference for me. I don't contribute to the core. My contribution is completely different. I'm not doing this. But I know that now I'm part of those that are sponsored by a company. And therefore I am able to say, okay, I'll create a talk, or I'll go to this WordCamp and so on. I'll give up my time. I contribute. I'm one of the organizers at WordCamp Valencia and the meetup here. But I know that it takes up my time, but I'm not fully sponsored, not at all, but at least I'm helped. And what worries me, I mean, I imagine that you all know Morten Rund Hendriksen, and I very much stand with. He's the one who first said, he wrote an article. Basically, I think the title is more or less open source is just done by those who can afford to show up. Because if you're a freelance person who makes money by selling their time, it can become really quite hard to contribute to the project. And
it's limited, yeah.
It's limited, and then what happens when companies are bought, but much bigger conglomerates who may, as you say, Rankus, they may not lead the agenda, but they definitely then have voice to steer it. So I feel like that's what I would like to see. I would like to see companies actually sponsoring independent players that don't want to keep their independence. That's, I think, what would help.
I would love to see that too, but given that we've been saying, and not we, but a larger group of we have been saying this for years. It's only happening sporadically.
I can't.
Well, maybe we should
Yeah.
sponsor it more. Maybe we should talk about it more. Maybe, I mean, I know I can be an agent of change in my own small way by talking to the companies I collaborate with. One of them is obviously Cloudways, and I know that Cloudways sponsor their own employees for the project. They do that. They sponsor me, so they are behind the project. They really believe in it because they have so many WordPress users that are their clients. Therefore, they're committed to it. So I can try and be an agent of change by going to Cloudways and saying, "What about this? Would you consider doing this?" And then see what they say. Why not? We can at least try. And of course, I put myself first.
Random but slightly related question: is there enough? I don't even know if these words ought to exit my lips, but here we go. Is there enough incentive to contribute? And what I mean by that is, do certain people, let's say, would you feel like you'd want more off the back end of it? In other words, it's very nice all this philanthropic stuff going on, and it's for the benefit of the community, and the code gets better and the project gets stronger and it grows and it grows. I wonder if some people want more in terms of like a commercial, almost like a sponsored arrangement. I will contribute to you if you show my ad on your platform, or I will pay for somebody to contribute. So, but I want a tangible thing in return. I want to be able to point to the thing and say, that's what I'm getting back.
I'm sure there's folks that would have an agenda like that, but I don't think that's where we need to go.
No.
And I don't think that's actually what drives this project.
No.
Hopefully. I mean, it sounds like you would. Sorry. Now I run silent.
Go on.
No, I was going to say the philanthropic part of it, I think, for me at least, and for many that I know, is just that helping others forward without having a personal agenda.
Yeah, that's nice.
Yeah, it just flows back to me anyway. So
I'll just point out this chart, which Courtney mentioned, felt it was a sort of slightly better representation, perhaps. She said, what did she say? I think the next graph, which is the one I'm about to show, graphic down the post, is more thorough on quantity of people per employee. So here we go. This says, of the 159 identified companies that contributed to WordPress 5.9, Automatic had by far the most contributors with 83 people. 10up and Yoast are the second biggest with 11 each. RT Camp, Multidots come third with 6 people each, and so on and so forth. So it's just a really interesting breakdown of who makes the project happen. You can find it at Jean-Baptiste Ordress, AUDRAS.com, and the piece itself is entitled WordPress 5.9 Core Contribution Statistics. So if you're interested in that and you want to know.
I think it's really nice. Visualization of data is fascinating.
These look like the same charts that Matt had at the State of the Word. I don't know if these are the charts that Matt had at State of the Word, but they look very, like right down to the color scheme and where everything is actually positioned. Maybe I'm misremembering that, but anyway, let's move on, shall we? Let's talk about something else. Let's talk, whilst we're talking about philanthropic, this WP Engines piece. I don't know where these numbers come from, but the numbers, I was captivated by them because the numbers were just so jolly big. So this is WP Engine. It's a post entitled The Value of WordPress. So, there's a philanthropic side, but also, obviously, many of you are in WordPress and you have your business. There needs to be a sort of financial side as well. Here we go. Let's talk about WordPress in numbers in terms of money. The WordPress economy, apparently, wait for it. Just make sure your jaw is like firmly held so it doesn't slap on something as you hear this number. 597 billion US dollars. That's what they think it would be. And just to give you some perspective on that, if WordPress, and I'm quoting, if the WordPress economy were equivalent to the market cap of a company, it would rank 10th amongst the largest companies worldwide. Again, I don't know where these numbers come from, but I'm just reading them off the WP Engine website. And it would, if the WordPress economy were a country, right? Take this in. It would rank as 39th in the world, according to the IMF list of countries by GDP. Now, make of that what you will. Obviously, it's not all in the hands of any individual or company. It's spread out over thousands of different entities. Nevertheless, it's pretty staggering amounts of money. 0.6 of $1 trillion. Pretty much a large amount of money. Any thoughts on this? Does this make you excited? Do you have no cause for concern here? Is it
I
just
mean,
what
the,
do you
the,
think?
the, the only thing that is a bit concerning, that on the one hand we see that we are the 10th biggest company if you would sum up everything, and the other hand there are so many places where no one want to pay the contributors. For example, how many troubles there were with documentation team or with other teams with sponsoring people to do stuff. So yes, companies are earning a lot of money, but in many cases it doesn't comes back to the community. There are really a lot of companies that are doing great job. For example, Yoast, because Yoast is really really remarkable when it comes to giving back from what they earned. But on the other hand, we saw that on this graph, I couldn't saw companies that benefit a lot. For example, I couldn't see Elementor, who is
So
and
if you compare this data with what we just saw, as in terms of how the stuff is broken down into what does it actually mean per company, or sort of, because it's, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but to me it's a guesstimate. We have no proper
true.
way of knowing if it's 0.6 or maybe 0.3. Either way, it's a lot.
Yeah.
But it's such a large number that it becomes very hard to connect it to anything. And what Maciek is saying, if you can connect it to what does that actually mean? Like, where is the money, and how much of that company, because it's companies eventually, how much of that is actually flowing back to the project? So that's the interesting part, and that I think the larger question there is there's us in the inner community. There's a large layer around it, and then there's this huge void of small clients or even very large clients that we have absolutely no idea about because they just don't interact with the community. So
that's true.
It's very hard to determine anything from these numbers other than, at 50%, they still be impressive. That's my take.
Yeah, the numbers are very, very big.
But it's also too big to grasp.
Yeah, that's right. I literally have no conception of what that kind of money could purchase.
No, but you need some kind of breakdown into how are you calculating?
Yeah, that is what I would like to have seen. But I thought I'd mention it anyway, because even if, like you say, Remkus, even if it's 50% correct and the numbers are just half as big, it's still a gigantic ecosystem that we're all swimming in. The projected growth comes a little bit later down. I'm showing it on the screen now, and I don't know where this comes from. Presumably by looking into the past and extrapolating into the future. The projected increase of 6.5% in 2021 means that total would, in fact, rise up to 636 billion. And it would appear, according to whatever data they've gathered, 68% of WordPress users plan to increase their use in the CMS in 2021. I think that probably should say 22. 89% of users expect WordPress community to keep growing over the next 5 years, which is amazing. And 45% of organizations that use WordPress plan to increase it. Again, probably 2022. My point being, we seem to have almost infinite growth. In the time that I've been in WordPress, which is about, 7, 8, 10 years, something like that, the numbers always get better. The numbers have never crescendoed or plateaued or declined. Every time I read a number, it's a better number than the previous occasion. I was quite curious that this week, Facebook, for the first time, posted like a stall and it was like the tiniest difference between what they had last year or month and what they had this month. Anyway, the point was there was total chaos in Facebook stocks when it went a tiny little bit backwards. we don't have to worry about that in that sense. But I am just curious. There must be a moment, because you can't have 101% of the internet.
No.
When
Isn't there, in the latest post by Joost de Valk about his CMS shares, didn't he indicate that the growth is somewhat flattening?
Oh, now that is interesting.
I think he
Okay.
did. If it's been a few weeks since I read it, but I think he mentioned something along the lines of it is not growing as steep anymore. It's still growing, but the curve of growth is just ever so slightly, I think, beginning to end up with what the natural number is going to be. And maybe that's 45, maybe that's 50, I don't know, but it's not going to go on to 60, 70.
I'm going to be Chicken Little. The sky is falling in. I'm going to start a Joomla podcast. It's all over. It's just
Joomla.
It just fascinates me that it's just kept growing. And maybe I just arrived at the inflection point where it just took a sharp upswing. I know it was growing a long time before then, but it really, the numbers, when you get into the 40s of the percent of the internet, that's breathtaking. That's really staggering.
So that's still not a fair representation, because it is measured. So the part of it is, I don't know what that total number is. It's either 10,000 or 100,000.
Yeah,
but it's
I think it's 10.
An X amount of sites, and then the percentage of that is WordPress. And this is playing with numbers. This is how can I lie with statistics, but then not intend to have a lie here. But we have no idea what happens outside of that 10% or those 10,000 or 100,000. We have no idea. The only party that would know is the WordPress project. They could, if they wanted to, extrapolate that from all the data that they have. Because everybody's WordPress site is phoning home at some point, and then you still have your internal stuff as well. So maybe add 5% to it, but then you will get a number that is saying something, because these percentages, yeah.
Has anybody got the number for the WordPress project? I'll just give them a quick call and they could just tell us off the bat.
On the other hand, the Press Gazette just published an article about news websites that are using different CMSs, and WordPress declined a bit during this year. So while it was growing in the online newspapers for many years, this year there was a very small but a decline. Also, there is one more thing that we also have to remember, that I'm not sure how does this guessing which CMS is used works, because we are using more and more headless approaches, and sometimes WordPress can be hidden in a very good way. So there is a chance that some of the websites that are marked as other are WordPress.
I still think that's a very, very small percentage given the total, but you're right. That's also one of the things that muddies the water in terms of what are we looking at. I think it's primarily a great marketing method that we have. Let's focus on the percentage of a small niche group and use that as a metric. But the reality is we have absolutely no clue.
It's very big numbers, and they're scary big. But it gives me some sort of confidence, at least anyway, that people who can put together big numbers are making them big, and it makes me feel, yes, I should be part of this ecosystem. It's growing.
Your podcast is safe.
That's right. Thank goodness for that. Okay, let's just say a few hellos. Hello, Darren. Hello, Darren Pinder. Nice for you to join us. I don't know that I've met you before, but nice to see you. And Daniel, thanks for joining us again. Nice to see you. Max, coming back to the point we had a little bit ago where we were talking about contributing and who does what, says there is the code level of contributing, but in the future you'll be able to contribute patterns, photos, and designs or blocks. Yeah, good point. It would appear that the photo library is kind of growing a fairly steady rate. I myself am a lousy photographer, so I'm not going to be uploading my photos, but that would be one way that
I've got one in.
Have you? What was it of?
I don't remember.
I'm going to upload. I've got thousands.
Steve Jobs. Are you, Peacher? Are you a keen photographer, or are you just going to just put your, you know?
It used to be one of my main streams of income. I still have lots of photos on Shutterstock. I took them down from other sites because at some point I got really upset by the exploitative system. So they pay you 20p to if an image costs $1, I get 20, they get 80, which is
Ew.
yeah. It's like that. Even sometimes when you start, it's probably more like 10 to 90. But I left them up in websites that made it difficult for me to destroy the portfolio. So just out of laziness, I haven't taken them off everywhere. But they're my photos. I can put them wherever I want. So yeah. 1,000.
There's Michelle saying hi from New York. She has contributed quite a lot of the photos, I think, because she's a very keen photographer. I think quite a few of them actually are hers. Peachy, you would be happy with that approach. Obviously, at some point in the past, you wish to turn your photos into revenue. You want to upload them somewhere where you would get.
Yeah, they were. I mean, yeah.
Have you moved to a point where those exact same photos you would now be happy to just put them up there because it's not what you primarily do now? You'd be okay with that?
It's more that if I'm making 20p on each of them, I'd rather give them away for free.
Yeah.
But and also some, they're old now. They're like from 10 years ago or more. So I don't feel possessive anymore. But what I would need to do, I guess, is really take them off the paid sites. I don't know if I can, if it's ethical or logical to offer them as paid for on some sites and free on others.
Yeah.
So I'd have to, but there's I think Shutterstock is all right, but there's another site that I'm on that's called Dreamstime that it literally wants me to delete. I have 2,000, maybe more. And the only way for me to deactivate my portfolio is to take each image off, delete each image one by one. I was like, but that's slave. I mean, I'm held captive by Dreamstime because I could not be bothered to do that. I mean, who could?
Yeah.
So maybe if you close your account down entirely.
You can't.
Peacher,
basically, there's no. I mean, I don't know if it's changed now, but I remember getting so upset that I had to just leave it, put it aside because it was just angering me too much. It's crazy.
Yeah,
can you imagine?
You know what this is, Peacher? This is a dark pattern.
It very much is a very dark pattern.
Peacher and I are doing this show every month called the WP Builds UI UX show, and one of the things that we want to get Peacher talking about is dark patterns. And that's a really good one where, we'll make it really hard for you to get off our platform. Apparently, I don't know how true this is because I've never tried it. Apparently, it's really hard to erase your Facebook data. And I don't mean hard as in impossible. I mean hard as in just a multitude of steps that you've got to go through in the correct order if you want to make that certain.
That's what Robert Keynes is saying right now. It sounds like being captive by Facebook. And also, I used to have a previous Facebook account that I simply am not using anymore. And I tried to download my archive because there's years and years, and I was not able ever, because in theory you are able to download your archive, and but you're not. I can't. They never let me. I don't even know whether I'd be able to get back into it now. So anyway, dark patterns. Can I make the appeal, Nathan?
Yeah, go for it.
Obviously, we're doing our own research, but if one of the things that we would like is if you come across dark patterns, and that's any clickbait, any annoying thing that wants you to do something that you didn't want to do online or in an email or anything like that, please let us know. Send us screenshots or URLs or whatever, and then we'll talk about it on the show, because we're on a mission to end dark patterns. So last time I took Nathan and the audience through what it's like to try and book a flight with Ryanair, and
my goodness,
the innumerable rings of fire that they have you jump through. So things like that.
This is our show. I didn't mean to stray into this, but as you've raised it, I've put it on the screen. It's wpbuilds.com/UI, and we've got a dark patterns field here now. If you come across a dark pattern, I sent you one earlier in the week, Peter. I don't know if you got it on.
Yeah, I did.
The other platform that we communicate on, and it was really, really annoying. But this seems to be more and more. Anyway, that
so I was actually thinking that because that form, Nathan, obliges you to submit a website as well, maybe we should explain that people can use it even just for the dark pattern only, and so not make that field required.
I will make
because
that a non-required
otherwise,
field. Yeah, that's fine. I can do that. I was deliberately making it awfully difficult to fill out. You know, I was really hoping that people would stumble at the last hurdle and the form would remain
Dark
empty.
pattern?
Exactly. It was a dark pattern. It was really dark. Okay, I think we're done with the ginormity of the WordPress ecosystem. Right, I think this is fabulously interesting. You may think I'm a nerd, but I love this. So I don't know how this came in my direction. I think this was Twitter, and I follow Matt Mullenweg, and he doesn't post on Twitter very much. And so when I see them, I look at them. And he was retweeting somebody called Joel Spolsky, and I could have got the surname wrong there. I think that's right. Who is the founder of all sorts of amazing stuff online, like Trello and Stack Exchange. And he was saying that he wants to build, or I say he, I'm guessing his organization, through this website called blockprotocol.org, wants to build in interoperability between blocks everywhere on the internet. So at the moment, if you imagine it, your block's in your WordPress website. Well, that's where your block lives. Everything inside that block belongs there, and it's not going anywhere. It's staying there. And he wants to make an open standard so that any block of any kind, not just WordPress, any kind on the internet, can communicate in some way, shape, or form. He wants to flesh out this protocol. So blockprotocol.org is the premise. I mean, if I'd have made this website, nobody'd take it seriously because I'm an idiot. But him doing it kind of makes me think, I think maybe this is a fairly serious endeavor. So much so that Matt then retweeted something along the lines of, yeah, we should get together and start to talk about this. So I don't know if this is something that excites you. I love the idea of stuff on my website being able to be put somewhere else. It just seems fabulous.
Seems amazing. I have to work out exact because I'm not as clever as you.
No, I'm. Let's go round maybe because we're sort of cross talking. Let's go with Remkus to start there.
So I think it's an interesting premise. It in many ways will be the thing that merges the internet together. Because if everything is a block, and a block is just a concept, but if everything is a unit of data that is interchangeable with any other type of CMS or platform, because that really ought to be a platform as well, then the next step is a collection of blocks, and then what do we need a CMS for? Well, that will be the flavor, right? That will be your preferred way of working with the blocks. I like that concept. I like that concept very much.
Well, especially if it was interoperable to the point where you could just sort of flip and flop between CMSs. I've got a friend who's building a website and he constantly flips between WordPress and other things. And each time it's a line in the sand. You have to sort of start again. But if you could sort of just take the blocks that you've got on one platform and push them somewhere else. CMSs are one thing, but it could be anything, couldn't it? It could be like your content management system or your CRM or whatever it might be.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me a little bit about the indie web movement.
Yeah.
It's on a different level because they are more about from one website communicating to another website. But I think, in essence, there's a similarity in wanting to be interconnected in all the ways. So if you combine this with IndieWeb, now there's something interesting. That would mean we can actually start to get rid of, the company that shall not be named anymore, but the one who lost 25% of their worth over an accounting thingy. I think it's an interesting approach. It's going to take a lot of years, but it's an interesting approach also for independence, I guess.
Yeah. Maciek, have you got any thoughts on this? I mean, it struck me that this was right up your street.
Yeah, this is because this sounds really interesting, and I totally agree with Remkus that this would really connect the whole web together. It would be like amazing. The problem is with all the standards, many companies likes to have their own standards.
Yeah.
We know about many companies that prefer to close the APIs and start doing things their own way. Or let's take a look at WordPress. We even have our own coding standard, which no one else uses, and for some reason we are sticking with it. And this is the thing I would be a bit afraid of. That okay, let's say that 10 years from this point, the block protocol is on. It's working. Many companies has adopted it. And sure, we would have block protocol WordPress edition. This is something that frightens me a bit. So I'm afraid that, for example, Gutenberg would be a hybrid of, let's say, this block protocol at Gutenberg itself, which in result didn't work as it should, because everyone followed the same standard. But still, I'm really keeping my fingers crossed, because this is something that it's not only the beautiful idea, but also the fact that Joel really did some amazing things, and he's really a known person over the internet. So maybe he will push the project, and maybe it will work. We'll see.
When they were inventing like the railway system in the UK, like 100 years ago or something, there was no protocol for how big the rails should be. And so you would basically get to a station, and the train, which should just carry on in a straight line, you had to swap the train because the wheels were of a different size. And so it went on for decades, is my understanding, until somebody said, look, this is enough. We need a protocol for how big the trains are. And so that was that. And I imagine the same thing kind of happened with the networking and the switching on the internet. You could imagine every country having a totally different IP stack or something, but somebody thankfully got in there and said, no, this is how TCP IP is going to work. All the packets are going to be moved in this way. That's
Exactly.
that. And wouldn't it be nice if data could be treated in the same way as, well, trains? That's the best analogy I've ever made in my life.
It hurts. It hurts.
I know it hurts. Oh dear. But there you go. But yep, wouldn't it be nice? Wouldn't it be nice if 5 years into the future we could look back at this moment and say, actually, that was the moment where everything became interoperable? I think you're right, Maciek. I think it's got. He's a guy that maybe could do it, but history shows, doesn't it? It's not easy to do.
How long have we had the block editor?
2 and a bit years, is it?
3.
Yeah, 3. 2016. Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
It's not going to happen, Nathan.
No,
it's not going to happen in 5 years.
I'm
if
going
it happens,
to.
It's in like a decade type thing.
Okay.
Unless Matt actually, again, we talked about agendas earlier. If this suddenly appears on the agenda, it'll happen faster. But it's a beautiful idea. I like what it proposes. I like what options it presents. But
go and check it out anyway. It is blockprotocol.org, and you can see that they've got the usual documentation, specifications, and stuff. And if this stuff excites you, I think it's worth having a look at. All right, from something interesting to, I don't know if this is interesting or just really frustrating. I don't know where everybody sits on GDPR, whether it's a good thing, whether it's bitten you, whether you find it to be a pain, depending on where your jurisdiction is. But this week, Sarah Gooding tells us that a German court has fined a website owner. So, I'm sure that's pretty much all of us. A website owner because they were using Google hosted fonts. And you kind of think to yourself, what? How does that work? Well, it turns out that the IP address, and I think specifically the IP address, nothing more, was of the person viewing the website was taken over to the United States. And although the fine was very small, it was €100, which I'm guessing was, maybe just a judge's way of saying, okay, let's see how this progresses in the future. The fact is, somebody got fined and is probably having to modify things in the future because the GDPR does not allow this. But I wonder how many of us didn't know that the GDPR didn't allow this, but also whether or not some of us think, okay, is an IP address worth it? I know that's the rules. So I'm opening it up. I'm going to throw the grenade again.
Yeah, I'm pulling the pin this time.
You pull it. Go on, really hard. Throw it right in.
So I had an interesting discussion with Matt. Sorry, Matt, forgot your last name right now. Last week, essentially about this, where so there's a different approach of what is an IP address in terms of how does it become a private thing. And my logic was very simple. If it can be traced to the whereabouts of someone, it can be traced back to who that person is. It's as simple and straightforward as that.
Yeah.
And if that is the case, it is privacy and it falls on the GDPR. There's no two ways about it. You can make it two ways about it because Matt Cromwell, there you go, remember the name. You can make it about more or less, but in all actuality, it allows you, and there's various techniques of doing so, to pinpoint who that person on the internet is. If that wasn't the case, then IP addresses wouldn't matter in terms of if a police member comes to your house and knocks on the door and says, hey, we just noticed that you were downloading an illegal movie. How do you know? Well, we have the IP address, and thus we have found you. So it's a non-discussion trying to make that in a non-privacy thing. It is a privacy thing, period.
It's interesting that in the article they're quoting from the case. It says, and I'll quote, "The defendant violated the plaintiff's right to informational self-determination by forwarding," and this is the interesting word, "the dynamic IP address." So it wasn't a fixed IP address or anything like that. It was just dynamic. But obviously the ISP can totally link that to you 100% of the time. They know who you are. But it is
and it's not
curious.
Just the ISP.
Yes,
it's not
yes.
just the ISP.
Yes.
It is way more than just the ISP.
Yeah, that's a good point. These, I feel that the debate feels like it's taking shape in different ways in Europe and in North America. It feels that it's going in different directions. I could be wrong about that. But anyway, a very small fine, I guess, €100, not too much, but presumably just a sort of warning shot across some bows. Of course, the solution is fairly straightforward. You could just download the Google font and have that on your own website, and that's possible. Of course,
there's
I
a
guess
plugin for that.
Right, there's always a plugin for that, but yeah, the GDPR
But
Google
doesn't
plugin.
the plugin will once connect with Google Fonts?
Yes, but it downloads it, and your website serves.
But
yeah,
once,
your website,
website
makes the connection.
Yeah,
yes,
I
that's
guess.
true. But still, once it breaks the GDPR.
Oh,
once,
I see. Yeah.
The moment that you download, it's only once, and
no. But you as a website, your website, your server downloads the Google Fonts, so that's not disclosing an IP address for anyone.
For a user.
It depends where is your server.
But it's still not the user.
Really
it's still not the.
Why?
So it's the website that connects, not the user. Yeah,
I can see this from both points of view, actually. But
I mean, this is
the other
an
thing you
edge
could do
case,
is just use
really.
Go on.
Yeah, this is a really edge case when, for for example, using a static website, building everything in local, downloading and pushing it back. So for a moment, you break the GDPR. Like I said, an edge case. But overall, this whole case of GDPR and American companies, because the Google fonts is not the only problem right now. We only have the problem with Google Analytics, with Austria ruling, and Germany is probably going to second this. So
and the plugin much closer to home also touches this.
Exactly.
We have Akismet, we have Gravatar.
Yeah,
So
I really did throw the grenade in, didn't I?
I already saw that there is an issue posted about Gravatar breaking the GDPR. So
it does.
So yes, it does. Of course, it does. Yeah. So overall, this will be very, very interesting when it comes to what will be happening on the line between the American companies, or even hosting things on servers owned by American company and European GDPR. This will be I think it will be really big, and it can evolve in different ways.
The article, which I'll put back on the screen just temporarily, goes on to make the point that the fine of €100 is really just a drop in the ocean, because I can't remember the numbers that they talked about, but the potential for you to be fined for this violation is kind of business ending amounts of money. You know, it could go through the roof. I'm guessing that in most cases you would.
I'm sure there is some company that's going to think, hey, I can make money off of this, and start suing companies and make a
what do they call that? Ambulance chasing or something, where the lawyers have a department where they go and find violating websites, package it up in a script, and go and robot the internet to figure out who's got Google fonts or whoever it might be. Yeah, really, really interesting. Sorry, Peach, I think we've locked you out of this debate. What do you think?
No, that's all right. I was listening intently because I don't know enough about it. And therefore, Rankus's explanation was very useful to me.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, in terms of the GDPR and UX, it has not improved things, because now you land on a website and you're like interrupted and upset by a million notices and things. But I had read this piece of news, and I am grateful that it was explained to me. So, but I'm more sitting here listening and learning, really.
A quick straw poll. I would say that 3 or 4 times a day, I visit a new website and I get the cookie thing, you know, where they want to manage my cookies. And this goes to what you were just saying, Peacher. And very often I get the option to manage my cookies, which is usually somewhat smaller button, which is perhaps not even a button. It's just some grayed out text or something. And then I get the big fat green accept all cookies button. Honestly, I'm so weary of it. I just think, oh, I'm just going to click the green button and clear the caches like once in a while. I
never.
Oh, that's what I wanted to hear.
Never,
right.
Ever.
Do you always click the manage cookies button?
Always.
And do you
I use
read
every
them and manage them?
Word. No. It depends on if it's a European company doing it or an American company. An American company will have option A, everything. Option B, maybe nothing, but still some stuff is put in there. But European companies mostly have the same type of cookie consent.
Yeah.
You click on the alternate link, and then you can, the 9 out of 10, you have 2 or 3 things you uncheck. And then you say, and then again, dark pattern, again, it says save or allow all. And then you think what I just did is allow all, but what it actually means, save preference. It's a small little link
terrible.
Right above it. So I always
terribly
click that.
designed.
Yes.
Yeah. But also, we are people.
I'm using Brave browser by default also block a lot of tracking stuff.
Right. I'm
But the
going to
cookie
use
stuff,
Brave as well. But we are people who understand what we're doing. Think about someone like my mother who uses her phone all the time, but she doesn't know what she's doing. She goes into a panic.
Yeah.
She's like, what is this? What am I doing? What if I'm clicking on the wrong thing? What's going to happen to me? Because we pastor her not to say yes to things because she gets, lots of
My
yeah,
approach
so
is just the same.
it's I don't see a way out of that. I don't know how to. I tried, with Cloudways, we did quite a few webinars with Ubenda, and I tried to get from them how can we make it better. But the thing is that it's not their job. I mean, their job is to make you
No.
compliant, not to improve the UX. But that's something that would be very interesting to properly get into.
In all honesty,
I
think it
occasionally
should be
do what
solved
you
by
do,
browsers.
Remkus. Oh, sorry. You carry on.
No, I was going to say, I think in all honesty, this needs to be solved by browsers.
Browsers.
And then we
okay.
have the
Totally
big
agree.
disadvantage. We have the big disadvantage that the largest browser that is currently in use is built by Chrome. Now the Chrome engine is pretty good, which is why I
Does
use Brave.
Firefox offer a kind of template for what cookies you may wish? In other words, is there any protocol for if this kind of cookie, do this, if this, do this, or any of that?
It's possible someone built something for that.
Yeah,
I don't know. I don't check that because I wouldn't trust it anyway. But yeah, this is an extreme dark pattern built upon another dark pattern, built upon another dark pattern, and this should all just never be in the face of anyone. Your browser should have settings, and those settings should be honored. Period. Done. Move on.
Yeah, do I hadn't even thought about that. That's fascinating. We've got quite a lot of commentary coming in. Thank you, Max, for saying about this. Robert started it off with saying this seems to be the new reality. And then we were specifically talking about the fine for the Google fonts. And Max was saying that he thought that this was a good thing. And then he goes on to talk about Facebook and Google Chrome and so on. Yeah, it's a really interesting subject. It's kind of like it's just a tangled mess, really. And the idea that people like us I'm on the internet all the time, and I've just got complete atrophy. Is that the right word? Attrition. I'm just bored of it. I just can't be bothered, Remkus. I wish I was you and I could be bothered to give myself that 20-second window to just go through.
A lot of people
have that. I know. Even Steve Jobs apparently wanted to be. This is never going away now, Rem, because I'm sorry.
Yeah. At the end of the episode, and we're done.
Yeah, that's right. Bye-bye. Yeah, I think that's a genius idea, though. If we had the browser take control of it and essentially just sucks that problem away. Peacher, I've got rid of Chrome off every machine this week. I found it impossible to do that on Android, so I just disabled it. And I'm using Brave, and I'm really happy with it. It's exactly the same as far as I can tell, but without, and I don't know exactly what's going on under the hood, but I've installed a thing called uBlock Origin as well, which you might want to look at, which is a nice little Chrome, well, in this case, Brave extension. Because Brave and Chrome extensions are identical. So, if it's available on Chrome, it's available on Brave. Yeah. And it purports to do a good job of blocking things that I would not like to be.
But this is helpful for us as users. But what about us as website creators?
I know.
How do we make it better? Because I'm still, I use Ubenda, but first of all, I'm never sure that I've done it right, that I have ticked all the boxes that I need to tick. And I don't think that the people who land on my site are having a good experience. And I just don't know how to make it better, basically.
I think one of the important things here is to figure out, what am I doing on my site that is that important? Do I need to track, or do I just need to know how many visitors I have?
Very good point.
If the latter is the question, and that's, in my experience, 9 out of 10, that's enough, right? They just want to kind of know what their site does. They're not going to go jump in Google Analytics. They're not going to do the whole funnel thing and landing pages and conversion. They just kind of want to know what's going on. And for those sites, go look at Coco Analytics. It's a beautiful plugin. It does everything it needs to do, but it doesn't use any cookies.
Coco, as in COCO.
Coco Analytics.
KOKO.
KO.
KO,
Thank you.
KO.
Huh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Awesome.
Let's see if
There
we
is
can get that on the
also
screen.
there is also Phantom Analytics and Plausible. They're also
But that's more of a
cookieless
Google Analytics
tracking.
comparison, right? If you still want to have large tracking and everything, then yes, Phantom.
Oh yeah, that's true. But let's be honest, there is still I think it's a kind of big group of people that would like to know what is happening on their website, and they install Google
Right.
Analytics just to see how many users visited their website during 1 month. And for cases like this, using Plausible or Phantom would be really enough. And they could disable the whole box asking us for cookie consent.
It's a good point. I would imagine the use case for things like Google Analytics is just exactly what you said. How many people viewed my pages? How many times? That's all I need ever. But who knows what is hidden in that lovely bit of JavaScript that Google is using to suck information out?
Yeah,
quite a lot.
A lot.
It's like, are you wearing glasses today?
Especially,
I know lots of companies that would really need way more. Well, I mean, is it fair that they get it? I don't know, but they, when you can segment, you can really target, and it's not always to
for sure.
lucrative aims. Sometimes it's helpful for the user that the companies can segment you and can. So yeah,
I'm going to mention this from Daniel Schultzsmith. He says Firefox offers complete cookie blocking or rules to block only certain types of cookies under enhanced tracking protection. Daniel, I'd add to that, and you've probably come across this. There's a beautiful Firefox extension, and I am thinking of making Firefox my go-to, but I'm not quite there yet. Seem to have landed on Braze. It's called multi-account containers, and essentially you say open Facebook every time in this container. And even if you open up a new tab, all the cookies are held in the Facebook container. So all the Facebook cookies live inside of the Facebook container. So I've got a Facebook one, I've got a Twitter one, I've got a Spotify one and a Slack container. And the nice thing is you can't make the mistake of opening it up accidentally outside of its container. It will enforce that policy. So I think that's quite nice. It's called, just one more time, multi-account containers. And I think Rob kind of sums up the whole problem in one nice little sentence. Remember, Nathan, the more we block, the more we will pay in dollars. If there's no cost to you, then you are the product. Yeah, I rewatched The Social Dilemma last week, and I was more alarmed the second time around than I was the first time. And it's like, yeah, go on, Remkus.
No, I think the whole privacy concern is people kind of know, but mostly don't care.
Yeah.
And until you get a full view of what it is they're doing, what it is they're tracking. So even if you don't have a Facebook account, you have a profile.
Yeah.
I mean, just the idea of that. And it's not just a profile as we kind of think this is the person. No, they know you.
Yeah.
Like all the details I've heard someone say who had some insight in it. They say, if you are to make an account, let's say you're 30 and you've never had a Facebook account, but you've been on the internet for 20 years, right? You were to start creating an account, it could fill out all your fields. And if that doesn't scare you, you're not grasping the concept.
Yeah. I always like to draw the analogy that just because you don't use Google's products, it doesn't mean they can't read all your email, because basically you're probably sending your email to somebody with a Google account, and they can look at your email and where it's come from, even though you know, quite interesting. Oh my goodness me, we've opened. I really did throw the grenade at you this time, and it got opened. So, okay, let's move on. We're going to miss out a few because we're going to run out of time if we don't. So I hope you don't mind. I'm going to plug something. It's an episode which I think is worth plugging. This is on the WP Tavern. Do a podcast there. It's going weekly now, actually. We started doing it weekly just like 2 weeks ago, and so this is the second of the weekly ones. It's with Amber Hinds, and she's talking about website accessibility. The podcast is called Jukebox, and we had Amber on talking about accessibility. I know this is your thing for 2022, isn't it, Peacher? When you're talking about designers, to put accessibility front and center. It's 40 minutes of Amber giving us wisdom about what you need to do and how you might best do it. And it was really nice talking to her. So please, if you feel like doing that, you just go over to, actually, what do you go over to? wptavern.com/podcast. And these featured images are going to get correctly resized at some point in the near future. But it's that one. It's the most recent one. It's number 12. There we go. Sorry, plug. Yeah. Massive plug.
So now can I just say one thing?
Please do.
That last week, or was it the week before? Yeah, it was. I talked at, well, I watched your, Maciek, I watched your webinar, as you know, but I also talked at the first WordPress Valencia, where I live here in Spain, meetup in a couple of years. And it was, I tricked them, because the title is Design for Conversion. So they all thought it was about design and about, well, it was true. It was about design and it was about how to make more money, but it was all about accessibility, in fact, in the end. So that's an angle that I'm taking. Plus, at the end, even though it was online, unfortunately, still, and it was basically through the comments on YouTube, but we managed to have a really lively discussion. And there were people in the audience saying, well, what about creativity? Is creativity then penalized because they want to have things moving and flying across the screen and stuff like that? And so I realized that that's going to be also my take on it, how to be creative and accessible, how to create gorgeous websites that are accessible, and how you don't need to be inaccessible and do lots of fancy stuff in order to create gorgeous websites and super interesting experiences, which is what the web is for.
Thank you.
Yes, you mentioned. Also, you mentioned, yes, because last week we were also doing a webinar about accessibility with Amy Carney, and I can say that when I said at my company that, hey, let's do a webinar about accessibility, I know that few people were like, really, accessibility? We should be more concentrated on those hardcore development problems. But I managed to push the topic of accessibility, and it really turned out to be a success. There were many interesting questions. For example, Picha, your question was also really great, because you asked how to make this everything working, the thing that you already that you're saying you are planning to do, and really accessibility is a really important topic, and it's great that more and more people are getting interested in it, because this is we sometimes really don't realize when we will need things related to accessibility in our life. For example, absolutely, our temporary disability, like breaking an arm. Okay, after some time, everything will be back to normal. But for some time, we just won't be able to operate with one arm. In my case, I learned how much my world has changed since we have a baby. Going around the city with a stroller, this is a bit like a partial disability, because I have to use ramps.
It's not a bit like, it's definitely, that's a typical temporary disability. Yeah,
exactly. And I really learned how ramps can be constructed in a bad way. I really thought this is something so easy, you can't do it wrong, and I was so mistaken. I have so many concepts of ramps gone wrong. Really, I think I think we could do a special episode about black patterns in ramps all around one Polish city.
You
Really.
could just pick up the stroller and carry it over.
It's incredible how your perspective changes. Yeah, but you can't always do that. Maybe you're not as strong enough to carry it.
As Remkus, we know.
Yeah, if you go and look at Remkus's social channel, Remkus loves picking heavy objects up.
Yeah.
But also the really interesting thing is that because I'm looking at it from a design point of view, but it's very much intermingled with code. You can't really separate them. But the really interesting thing is that if you follow best UX and UI practices, or if you follow proper HTML structure or proper typography, you're already almost all the way there. And I'm not exaggerating.
Exactly.
It really is like that. When I've been looking because I want to do a course on accessible typography, and I look it up and I go, yeah, that is best practice. I mean, obviously I learn lots of stuff and I have to learn what's legal and what's not legal. So I'm doing all of that, but really best practice is often. So it's not that difficult. It really isn't. You can build an accessible website quite easily.
Brilliant. There was obviously a load more in there than I gave time for. We probably, with hindsight, probably should have given that a bit more time. But anyway, there you go. There was a podcast episode. Obviously, there's things over on WP Owls, which you might like to look at as well. Brilliant. Okay, we'll keep it, try and do another 10 minutes and then knock it on the head. So I'm going to go through these quickly. Tickets are available should you wish to be an attendee of WordCamp Europe 2022. It's in Porto. It's the 10th annual WordCamp of Europe, and it's happening the 3rd to the 4th in Portugal, Porto. And there's information on the website. It's europe.wordcamp.org /2022 if you want to get those. Okay. The next one is just this little interesting thought. I don't know. I don't run a great big company. I certainly don't run two. But if I did run two big companies, I'd find it awfully challenging to flip between one and the other. But this week, Matt Mullenweg's tweet, an interesting one. He says, I suppose this is a good opportunity to let people know that I'll be running Tumblr personally for a while, and it will be my top priority within Automatic. It was, of course, acquired, I don't know, I'm going to make up a number, 2 years ago by Automatic. Tumblr's now run by them. Yeah, that's right. So it is part, I don't know how the legal structure is, whether it's part of Automatic or if it's a separate business entity. I have no idea. There is a ton of opportunity. Yeah, okay, thank you. That's great to know. There's a ton of opportunity for improvements in the community. Now, of course, this immediately got some interesting tweets in reply. And just to paraphrase, some of them were a bit like, does this mean that you won't be leading WordPress releases in the future? But I did think it was quite interesting that he's decided he's going to take over Tumblr personally. I confess I have a Tumblr account. Never used it, really. I think everything's automated so that posts go out automatically, but I don't have a lot of interaction over there. But my understanding is that those people who use it are real die-hard users of it. But anyway, nice problem to have, I guess. Sorry, I'm going to have to take a glass of water. Okay, last couple of things. First one is not controversial at all. This is just brain dead easy. Go and have a look at this. This is a design tool. Came across, I don't know who sent this to me this week. It's called penpot.app. And the idea is, at the moment at least anyway, I don't know if it's intended to be free, but it's an open source design and prototyping platform meant for cross-domain teams. Penpot is web-based and works with the Open Web Standards, SVG, for all and empowered by the community. So it's an open source design tool. And I know there are all sorts of
it's a bit like Figma. But
well, I was thinking it. Yeah, I mean, I don't really use Figma, so I don't really know, but it does look like that, doesn't it? We're looking at the screenshot, and it's kind of pre-configured templates and mock-ups for things like mobile phones and what have you. And what caught me really was that the UI looks really nice, and that it's totally free. So I just thought I'd drop it in purely for that. You know, it's maybe a thing worth looking at, but it does look nice. And then
it
finally,
does indeed. Very interesting.
Okay, Peacher, if you do have a play with it, tell us what your thoughts were next time you come.
Definitely.
Yeah. Okay. And the last one, this was brought on the show by Maciek, who this is a piece over at, I love this domain, coderjerk.com. I want that domain. Coderjerk.com, and it's called The Complicated Futility of WordPress. Now, I don't want to butcher it, but Maciek, do you want to introduce why you've dropped it in? What was piquing your interest?
I overall like to read articles about how WordPress is not what it was and stuff like this. A lot of them are just ramblings, but here I must admit that Dan has some points. I mean, okay, there is a lot of rambling here too. But it is true that WordPress is changing, and this change is rather difficult for many developers. I think that many developers feel a bit uncertain about where WordPress is going. Are we trying to be the next Wix or Webflow, or are we still going to be the same? I wanted to say developer-friendly environment, but we are a bit legacy development environment. So, like I said, I understand some points made by Dan about this uncertainty, but also I saw few comments over Twitter, for example, by Alain Schlesser, right? I didn't butcher his name, yeah. And he also saw some things that Dan was right about, especially the fact how Gutenberg is mixing the layer that is responsible for the website, how website looks, and for the data. And so yeah, there are many problems, and we can see right now that WordPress looks like it's only concentrating on full site editing, because whenever we look at the latest releases, we only see news about block editor, full site editing. And I understand why PHP developers can feel like I said, they can feel uncertain about the future, because it really starts to feel that, but are those PHP things that we have in core and that really require some love for few years already, will there ever be fixed or changed, or are we even trying to update the minimal PHP version? What is happening here? Especially when, on the other hand, we are pushing with Gutenberg to be with almost with the latest versions. We are using package managers. So everything, when we always heard about PHP stuff, that we have to remember about backward compatibility when it comes to Gutenberg. It doesn't work. So yes, overall, it's complicated.
It's really interesting because this is a guy, Dan. I confess I don't know Dan Devine, I'm going to say is probably his name, but he's obviously got a bit of a love-hate relationship with WordPress over the years. It kind of feels like he's been almost forced into liking it. And more recently, this is enough. Gutenberg is enough. That's the line in the sand which he refuses to cross. And he makes this point. So this comes off the Yoast website. Yoast obviously very bullish, very into Gutenberg, and helped create it. Yoast say full site editing is a huge development for WordPress. The upshot is that you have more control than ever over the design of your site, etc., etc. More of the same. And then his reply, which I really like, the thought of a client-side of client-side marketing interns playing around with site-wide designs should make the blood of any web professional run cold. Sites that have been painstakingly designed and built, reviewed and refined to the last detail every step of the way with stakeholders on the client side, optimizing UX, legibility, performance, and upholding the client's brand can now be squelched in an instant by somebody with 3 months into the job. Furs yellow. Just thought that was lovely.
I would immediately counter with, but this has always been a problem.
Yes.
This is not of late.
Yes.
But to be more to answer this paragraph better, yes, you have a whole bunch of controls now, right? You can have all these wonderful things inside of full site editing, or just a block editor inside of content, whatever. Sure, but any agency worth their salt would also remove the things or configure the things to the point where that's exactly what they should need. So I think it's a moot argument altogether.
There's going to be an awful.
You can bitch and moan about it as much and as long as you want, but the bottom line is you have tools to your availability to make it a lockdown version if that's what you need to have.
The capability in the near future for things to be locked down inside of the block editor, so who gets access to what, and hopefully that's going to be much more robust than we have at the moment.
Yeah, but you can choose if a paragraph is allowed to have 20 pixel font.
Yes.
Size.
I do wonder. Wonder if there was a literal moment where somebody did actually want the button yellow in Dan's life, where the website was destroyed, and the client actually said, "But I wanted it yellow." But look what you did. You spent 4 hours trying to find the yellow. Just phone us up and tell us you want it yellow. Okay, There we go. That's it. Unless Peaches got anything to say about that.
Well, the one thing that springs to mind is that when you have schooled a client properly on accessibility and UX, they will not ask for yellow because you have an answer to them saying, well, you may, but this is not going to be compliant. It's not going to be legible, blah, blah, blah. So you can actually, or if they want the logo bigger, if you know what you're doing, you always have an answer to that.
There is no yellow. We don't have yellow here. Stay away from the yellow. That's it. We've reached the hour and a half stage. We've done number 195. I really appreciate it. Thank you to Maciek. Thank you to Peacher, and thank you to Remkus for joining us today. Really, oh dear, I'm going to get it in the neck when this call ends. We'll hopefully see you on the next show. We'll be back every Monday, 2 p.m. UK time, and here comes the awkward moment, Maciek, that you don't know about, and that is we have to all wave. We have to raise our hands like this and wave at the same time. Oh, Remkus is... all right, okay, if everybody's going to do two...
We used to have to do two as well. Way.
There we go. That's it. The awkward moment is over. Thank you for coming and joining us. We'll see you again soon. Take it easy. Bye.